I fucking love anime music. Everyone talks about openings and endings, and yeah, I love those too, but I want to see more love for soundtracks. There are so many absolutely godlike soundtracks out there, but ever since a certain show started airing, I've been absolutely fixated on this. The Jujutsu Kaisen soundtrack blew me away, even all the way back in season 1, like 38 years ago. This show's music had so much going for it. There is so much variety in this thing. We've got your more typical shonen hype battle music, but we've also got some weird shit. And like any first season of a show, season 1 of JJK has the job of establishing the story and the characters from the ground up. It covers 4 main story arcs, all of them being fairly different from each other, so naturally the soundtrack is going to have a lot of variety because it has to wear a lot of different hats. It also had 3 main composers on the project, which is a lot, and a bunch of guest artists featured, including a whole bunch of non-Japanese hip-hop artists, giving the music more of a modern feel, which makes sense considering that the story takes place in 2018. Basically what I'm saying is that the soundtrack of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 had a lot of charm coming from how unique and experimental it felt, and I was loving it all the way through. And then Season 2 aired. Unlike Season 1's 4 story arcs, Season 2 only covers 2, Gojo's past and the Shibuya incident, both of which are a lot more serious and focused on specific messages, themes, and important plot developments. So naturally we get a soundtrack that's a bit more focused, tonally consistent, and maybe you could say mature. Like it knows what it wants to be now. There's now also only one main composer, so generally we find ourselves jumping around between styles a bit less. Instead, we're able to take our existing themes and develop them a bit further. So you could say in a way that Season 1 has breadth and Season 2 has depth. But what that doesn't mean is that we're lacking in variety in any kind of way. Holy shit, no. Season 2's soundtrack still gives us a really interesting mix of musical styles, instrumentation, crazy chaotic rhythms, and maybe even more than ever, a mix of the old and the new. Okay, I'm gonna keep this intro short though, because for the rest of this video, I'm gonna be going over the entirety of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 and talking about the music the whole way through. Not absolutely every single scene and every song, but we're definitely gonna cover a lot. And I'll be trying to highlight something really important. Obviously, all of the music in this show is fantastic, even as just something to listen to on its own. But something I really don't see people talking about enough is how the show specifically uses the soundtrack. Given any scene, both the choice of song as well as the timing at which the song is used play a really key role in shaping the viewer's experience. They're not just randomly chucking music into scenes. They're carefully timing specific parts of the music to go along with specific visual story beats. And when that's done really well, the music doesn't only complement what's going on in the scene, it is actively elevating and enhancing the storytelling itself. A good test for this is that if you're listening to a song from a soundtrack and you find yourself actively replaying the scene that it came from in your head while the song is playing, that's how you know that they've done a really fucking good job musically directing that scene. And God, does that feel fucking good. Okay, let's do it. So we're going to start off talking about the music of the Hidden Inventory arc, also known as the Gojo's Past arc. We're actually going to skip past episode 1 because the first scene we're going to cover is in episode 2. For some context, the scene basically serves the purpose of having Gojo show off and explain his cursed technique while fighting this bag mask dude. And the song that plays during the scene is, of course, appropriately named This piece has 3 main sections, which I'll call the A section, the B section, and the third section. The A section sounds like this. A little arrogant, a little cocky, and perfect for this guy. The B section sounds like this. It's just as confident sounding, but we're now getting a little more of a well-defined melody coming through on the piano. And finally, the third section, which you might say is the climax of the song, sounds like this. It's actually the same melody that we just got in section B, just taken over by the strings and playing a more drawn out and louder version of the theme. And we've kind of ascended here. Like, it's not something I would really call arrogant anymore. It's more like grandiose, like we're witnessing something incredible in motion. Now, this little theme that you heard in the B section and the C section just now is really important, like really fucking important. And the reason for that is that this is what I'm unofficially calling Gojo's theme. Recurring musical themes or leitmotifs are super prevalent in JJK. You might already be familiar with some of these character themes from before in Season 1 in the movie. Gojo's theme in Season 2 is by far the most prominent character theme in this entire soundtrack. And that's for two reasons. One is obviously with how important of a character Gojo is, like he's featured very heavily in both arcs. Both storylines kind of revolve around him and his position at the forefront of Jujutsu society. But the second reason is that it's a fucking banger. It's a fucking banger. Like, goddamn, no wonder they use this theme everywhere because it sounds absolutely amazing. And of course, since we're gonna see this theme pop up in so many other songs in this soundtrack coming up, we're gonna keep a tally. Anyway, the character themes in this show do an amazing job at representing their respective characters. Okay, enough of that though. Let's take a look at how this song is used in the scene. Hey, what's up? So this song starts playing near the end of Gojo's fight with the bag dude right here, who's lying on the ground. And right off the bat, the arrogant sounding A section lines up really well with the intro of this fight. Now, I talked a lot about how this song sounds really arrogant, really cocky, and it really lines up well with how much of a cocky little shit Gojo is being right here. And right here, the song starts going through this kind of transition period a little bit. We slow down the rhythm a little bit, and it kind of indicates to us that, yeah, we're going to the B section now. And Section A ends here pretty much as soon as Gojo's done explaining this guy's ability, and he's ready to start talking about his own ability with Section B. Timing the music like this gives each of these actions their own kind of unique identity within the scene. Like, it kind of helps them stand out from each other. Section B here is a lot more well-defined and developed, and you can think of it as Gojo thinking his own ability is way cooler than this fucking dude's. But then right here, listen to the music changing again. We're getting into another transition. The explanations are finishing up and our melody is starting to build up a little bit more to something. Gojo's now finished talking and finally ready to show off. He's finally about to do something. And we're immediately hit with this kind of anticipation by this suspended note. By the strings right here. That right there is such a great transition to what we get right after that, because this placement of this little melody that we just heard transitions us into the final section of the song. And it fits really perfectly with this shot right here of Gojo just kind of sticking his hand out and freezing in place for a brief moment as we wonder what he's about to do. And Rico is also wondering what he's about to do. And we get the perfect payoff for this little wait as we head into Section C. The Section C beginning is matched by the sound of the glass shattering and Gojo teleporting. If Section A was explaining the other guy's ability and Section B was explaining Gojo's ability, then Section C is us finally starting to see it in action. The main theme is proudly playing at full volume and coinciding with a pretty incredible sight of Gojo just triumphantly floating in midair as everyone else in this scene is shitting their pants. Alright, next we're going to jump ahead to episode 4. The context is that this is just after Toji has ruined the party.
Oh, I'm sweating as shit.
There's actually 3 songs in this episode that I want to talk about, and they're all pretty different from each other. These are the 3 songs. They're called With Rage, Delirious, and If I Am With You. With Rage, I think is kind of a perfect song for Jujutsu Kaisen, and clearly the producers think so too because they use this song fucking 7 times in the show. This song, just like the one we heard before, is kind of made up of a bunch of really distinct sections. The first one is literally just like this tense ambient noise. You'll hear the show use this a lot as just raw background noise to build up tension, and lots of people may not even realize that it's part of an actual song, but it's really good at what it does. We then get a bridge section where we're hearing drums coming in, and the second section has this kind of wavy synth sound coming in, playing this simple melody. Giving the song more of a proper identity and raising the intensity just a little bit more. Then the third section comes in with more bass, backing everything up and giving us more action. And it's at this point that the song actually sounds fitting for a piece called With Rage. We're still continually building up, adding more instrument layers one after another after each section, and just when we think we're gonna get some kind of crazy drop, we instead get this oddly beautiful piano melody backed by the synth sounds comes in at what's supposed to be the climax of the song, the most intense part. But instead it's kind of weirdly calm and serene. What I hear out of this personally is some kind of contained rage, like anger being channeled into some kind of controllable form. And I think thematically this fits so well with the story of JJK, especially in this season because so many of the fights are fueled by some kind of anger or revenge. But at the same time, it's really rare that anyone ever fully loses their cool. I think this song's great, and it's no wonder that they use it so often. Also, for the keen listeners, that piano melody I just mentioned, Gojo's theme. Which makes With Rage our second song to feature this theme. Okay, so how is this used in the scene? Well, like I mentioned, the first part of the song is literally just this ambient noise. So we start off with just that ambient noise. Now, it doesn't actually last that long in the song itself, but the show drags this out a lot to play out during pretty much the entirety of the prelude to the fight, which is this whole section while our king here is talking. I'm skipping forward, it's still going on, and it goes on for quite a while to build up that tension slowly, all the way until just about right here. When Geto finally cuts in and interrupts Toji. But this pause in the music doesn't actually last that long either, because pretty soon after that we get thrown right back into the song as soon as Geto says, It's pretty obvious how intense that was, right? They just went from 0 to 100. Once again, the production team is taking some liberties here to mess with the song because this piece is supposed to build up slowly before gradually getting to that part. But they really want to convey how abruptly and suddenly the fighting starts in this scene. Maybe it's kind of a weird comparison, but the way that they use the music here is basically kind of like how horror movies use jump scares. The first part serves to build tension and make you a bit uneasy, but then that ambient noise stops and makes you lower your guard. But then because they've done that, then they can jump right into the most intense part of the song immediately when you least expect it, with no transition whatsoever, but to be as jarring and shocking as possible. And of course, the rest of this scene of them fighting is just full-on action, and we get the most intensive With Rage coinciding with that perfectly. Later in this same episode, we get another really important fight. Round 2 of Gojo versus Toji. And the first song that plays during this fight is called Delirious. Pretty fitting title considering, well... This one starts off pretty quick and upbeat, with a strong and repetitive beat, along with these constant beeping tones. The first half of that song is basically more of that repetition and layering that we were talking about before. And the whole point of the song basically is to be really chaotic and unpredictable, which is shown by the piano coming in and kind of going apeshit in the background. We then eventually go to this bridge section where we hear two interesting things. One is that this song actually has a little bit of that dubstep wubble wubble wub in the background. But the second is a returning motif from the song that we just heard before this, With Rage. And just like with that song, this leads us into a section where Gojo's theme once again is playing loud and clear. Alright, now we're talking about the scene itself. It's honestly not too complex in terms of how they use it. It's a bit more of a generic action song to start things off. Right as the fight starts, they make use of this fast and strong tempo to play into the action. You're being hit right away with a truck when you're fighting Gojo. Then the piano comes in, and it's also fittingly chaotic and unpredictable, as Toji is now starting to kind of reason his way through this chaotic and unpredictable fight. Now, unfortunately, the song ends a bit early here as we head into the next phase of the fight, but shortly after we end here, we get the next song, which is called If I Am With You. It's a really slow, emotional, pure piano piece that gives us a really huge contrast from what we just got. It's the type of song that you might think of as being a weird choice for a fight scene. That is until you watch this scene. This is the famous I alone am the honored one scene, where Gojo is basically floating around talking about how fucking good he feels. This is no longer a fight scene. This is a showcase of how powerful Gojo has gotten. And the show is just showing us how beautiful this technique is. So it's only fitting that we would get this type of song to go along with it. And as the piano stops and then gets more intense and more intense, we get these panning shots of what the fight is looking like. But it's still slow, and it's just showing as much beauty as possible instead of trying to show off much of the fight itself. Maybe a bit of overanalysis, but I find the name of this song to be incredibly fitting as well. First of all, this is actually the second time we hear it in the show. The first was actually back in episode 3, during a montage of Riko having fun with the boys. The boys! But here in this scene, Riko, the you of If I Am With You, is gone. She fucking died. And this is also the incident that started the down spiraling of Geto as well. So this is the scene where you might say for the first time, Gojo is not with you. Gojo is alone, and his newly ascended power makes it even more so. The title of this piece really contrasts with the statement, I alone am the honored one. And this really plays into some of the main themes of Gojo's character development throughout the show, which is standing alone as the strongest. And obviously, as you might expect, this is another song that has Gojo's theme in it. It's a bit harder to notice, but that's because they're messing with the formula a bit here. Okay, before we finish off the hidden inventory arc, there are 3 more songs that I want to go through first. And all of these scenes take place in episode 5. The first scene is the well-known,
do you run duos together because we suck at the game? Or do we suck at the game because we run duos together?
Just what are you trying to say?
Where Gojo is finally confronting Geto about his weird fucking genocide shit, and they break up sadly in front of the KFC. And the song is fittingly named Remember how earlier I was talking about Limitless curse technique and I was saying a whole bunch of shit about, oh my god, this song sounds so arrogant, it's so arrogant, it sounds so arrogant, oh, Gojo's so arrogant. Well, this is like that too. It's a very quick, very snappy and arrogant, obviously, sounding song. The whole thing with the rhythms and instrumentation laid out kind of reminds me of Pekko's theme from Ping Pong the Animation, which is this childish and playful and definitely arrogant theme that plays to give off this feeling of, I'm better than you and I'm showing off. Given the scene this plays in, it's pretty clear that this annoying na-na-na-boo-boo type melody is meant to represent the relationship between Gojo and Geto. But there's also something really cool to mention how they use the song in this scene in particular. To nobody's surprise, this is the 5th song that we're hearing that features Gojo's motif. It's everywhere. It's in the bells that play near the beginning of the song and continue like all the way through, playing pretty frequently. And it also shows up even more from the B section of the song right here. Only you wouldn't know that from watching the scene, and here's why. As you know, Gojo gets kind of shat on in this conversation. Geto spits his shit, and Gojo is left there not really knowing what to say or do. So you'd think that as one of the two main characters in the scene, Gojo's theme would make a lot of sense to use here. Only when we play the actual scene back, we don't hear Gojo's theme at all.
親だけ特別というわけにはいかないだろう。それにもう私の家族はあの人たちだけじゃない。
Like, you don't hear the bells here. You don't hear that da 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 thing at all. I feel like taking out the bells playing Gojo's theme while Gojo is getting trashed on in the conversation is no coincidence. Geto's words are really getting to him here. He's confused, he's lost, he's desperate. And most of all, he's questioning his sense of self and what he's meant to do. So to me, deliberately excluding Gojo's motif in here, in this section, is a really cool and fitting detail that they decided to include. I feel like not a lot of people picked up on that, but it's so good. It's so cool. All right, next up, we have one of the coolest pieces of music in the soundtrack. It is very interesting and unique. The scene is Geto taking over his cult, and the song is called Premature. I actually have no idea why it's called that. If someone knows, please tell me, because I'm fucking stupid. Remember at the end of episode 4 where Geto is traumatized basically from the cult clapping and applauding over Riko's death? And earlier in this episode where we get several scenes of Geto hearing the sounds of the shower, but being reminded of the clapping, or when he's listening to the rain while talking to Yuki, only to once again hear the clapping? Well, I'm amazed to announce that they turned Geto's PTSD into a song. The song that plays during this scene is entirely made up of clapping. Only the clapping isn't chaotic and uncontrollable like what we've been hearing before. It's actually now following a proper tempo. It's controlled, it's organized, and it shows us that Geto himself has now taken control of what once held him prisoner. He's finally taking charge. Our genocide daddy. Let's fucking go. I'm sorry. So now we're finishing up with the last scene of Hidden Inventory, where we're finally ending the flashback and we're going back to the present day. We get a Gojo POV and a nice, wholesome scene of Gojo and his 3 students. And the song here is called You Better Get Strong, which is a title that alludes to Gojo wanting Megumi to get strong in the scene that we just saw right before this. And because this is such a Gojo-centered scene, we get a just as nice, wholesome version of Gojo's theme. Right before everything goes to shit, of course. Evangelion! I'm gonna write Evangelion. We are finally here. The Shibuya incident, which is what I would say if I didn't first have to talk about this fucking mech fight. Yep, we're actually starting off with Mahito versus Mechamaru, which is a really cool fight for a lot of different reasons, but one of them is the music, obviously. This whole fight is basically like one giant tribute to popular mech shows like Eva and Gurren Lagann. And of course, the appropriately named track that plays during this fight is called Ultimate Mechamaru Mode Absolute. I don't really think I need to explain that title. I don't have too much to say about this, but it is really fucking cool. Like, we hear this song in episodes 6 and 7 throughout this whole fight, and the whole thing really just does sound like a mech fight song. It sounds a lot more like it fits in a mech show rather than JJK, which makes sense. Like, there's some more specific stuff too. Like, the timpanis in this song are basically directly taken from the decisive battle theme from Evangelion. If you're a mech fan, then I can probably say that you were creaming yourself a little bit for the first time when you were listening to this. Okay, now we get to the real Shibuya incident. Skipping past episode 8, we've arrived at episode 9. This is one of the best episodes for usage of music. It is used so masterfully in this episode for enhancing what's going on in the story. The setting, of course, is Gojo versus Joe Goat and Asparagus. Oh yeah, and Choso. I don't know what took him so long to show up, but he does show up eventually. There are a total of 6 songs in this section of the video that I want to talk about. And they are in order: Locust Plague, With Rage again, Hidden Inventory, 3 Years of Youth Overflowing, Expectation, and Recapture. The first 3 are all reused songs from earlier in the season, and the rest all see their debuts here. And those 3 are songs that seem to have specifically been made for this episode, which is always really cool to see. The fight starts off with the song Locust Plague, which was first used in the Yuji versus Grasshopper Dude fight, which I honestly don't know why that fight was a thing. Musically, it's pretty cool. So we've got the brass playing these long sustained notes in a dissonant sounding melody, creating this feeling of uneasiness and tension, while the percussion is just fucking going insane, wailing away, creating this really cool contrasting melody with a chaotic rhythm to keep the tempo of the fight going. It also definitely sounds very evil, like clearly very evil, which also makes it a lot of fun to listen to. Now, I can't say this song was specifically composed for this scene, but they still use it in a really cool way. Of course, like I said earlier, the song sounds evil, except the one who is dominating the fight here is not the evil people, it's Gojo. Except the way Gojo's behaving, which is mixed together with the song and the way the song sounds, kind of makes Gojo seem like the villain. But anyway, this is actually a good example of knowing when and when not to use music at all. Because this song plays during most of the fight, but it stops after it gets to a certain point, which is right here. And this is where Gojo starts to switch his focus a little bit off of just playing around onto killing mode. He starts to target Hanami and walks her into the wall and fucking blows her up like, you know, a fucking lunatic. But it's super crucial that there's no music during this part, because we can really focus on what's left in terms of the audio. The sounds of Gojo's technique absolutely fucking crushing Hanami to bits, along with the lights flashing on and off just after that to really deliver that impact. Using the chaotic sounds of Locust Plague for the back and forth, followed by absolutely no music for the one-sided conclusion of the fight, makes for a really powerful contrast. So sometimes no music, honestly, is the best music. Anyway, later in the episode, the anti-Gojo squad's plan starts coming into play more and more with the arrival of Mahito and his things. And it's here that we get a familiar song coming back with Rage. It's a bit hard to hear at the beginning, but this scene, aside from being one of the most iconic scenes in the entire show for plot reasons, is also one of the best examples of music usage in the entire series as well, because it's an absolutely perfect example of matching up specific beats of the song to what's going on screen. Of course, at the beginning, just like before, we get that ambient noise from with Rage just starting to build up tension slowly. And it's right here that happens. Mahito and Choso's attacks on the crowd match with the song starting to ramp up as well. And it happens right after they shout their attack names. Right there. And it makes the scene look and sound so much more satisfying when you have that audio cue to go along with it. In this song, you have different levels of tension, right? The levels of action in the scene match up with the levels of tension in the song. The more tense the song feels, the more tense the action is in the scene that accompanies it. But then we get to this part here, this slow zooming shot of Gojo thinking about what to do. It's a part where we slow the song down a little bit. We're slowing things down for the explanation while still keeping tensions high. But there's no better way to do this than with the intimate sounding piano section of the song coming in during this part of the scene. They also modified this song to achieve this effect even more here, so it's supposed to sound like this. But here we instead get they basically removed the wah 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 thing to strip the music down to the bare bones, to get us as close to Gojo's thoughts as possible. And as we get closer and closer to the decision, the song gets louder and louder to make us more uneasy. We get a zoom in, we get more uncertain about what's gonna happen, the song gets even louder, and as we hit the peak of anticipation, they stop the song. Now you know this next scene. This is the scene where Gojo needs to run around the entire fucking subway platform, slaughtering all these motherfuckers right here. And it's gonna be chaotic. It's gonna be messy. It's gonna be a superhuman feat that we haven't seen before up to this point. So the song is gonna have to reflect all of that. And of course, there's no better choice than Hidden Inventory is a really fast-paced and chaotic piece that mirrors Gojo's actions here. You can barely tell what's going on the screen, and you can also similarly barely tell what the fuck is going on with the music. The song is essentially just piano and drums wailing away, going insane, with no time to think about any order or logic. It's just pure, basically improv jazz going on. Similarly, Gojo's decided what he needs to do. and he needs just to focus on executing it without caring about control, no matter how messy it might get. Oh, sorry, sorry. I got distracted. I'm gonna bring up this point again because it's really important for this upcoming scene. But I believe that there's two ways that any piece of music can be used as part of a show's soundtrack. The first one is basically like a vibe check, right? Sad scene, sad song. Funny scene, funny song. Epic scene, epic song, and so on. This is probably like 90% of cases when it comes to music being played in TV shows, including this one. But the second way is that a song can be used way more deliberately, as if the song was specifically crafted to fit a certain scene, or that the scene was directed deliberately to fit the music. We start off this scene with one word and one note.
Yeah.
This one word rings through Gojo's mind here, and as if the soundtrack is trying to mimic it, we get just one singular piano note to match it.
Satoru. Huh? Hisashii ne.
This piece is called 3 Years of Youth Overflowing, which I assume is referring to the 3 years of youth that Gojo and Geto got to spend together before, the thing. As fake Geto introduces himself, we get the continuation of the song, which, by the way, is yet another addition to the Gojo theme collection. Though there's a slight difference here because it's a slow, pure sounding and nostalgic sound instead of the fast, chaotic ones we've been getting used to. And right here, as soon as he's convinced that this is not Geto, we get another shift in the song. The drums kick in. The song changes a bit, it becomes more sinister. The drums get louder. And we get to the really intense, uneasy part of the song, and it keeps going until fake Geto reveals his brain. And just as this happens, we get hit with this major shift in the song. Music is now fully twisted. It's completely different from what we had before. It's basically transitioned from Gojo's happy, nostalgic theme into full-on villain theme. But of course, we're still not done yet. There's some more songs to talk about. Even though Gojo is in this little spooky skeleton box, his influence lives on. This next scene features the song Expectation. The context here is that Geto and team have successfully sealed away Gojo and are now getting ready for their next move. But just before that, something unexpected happens. Timing-wise, as soon as that fucking box drops, we get the start of the song, which gives us this little tricky little mischievous-sounding melody. I love this one. Even though Gojo's been sealed away, and even though we've been given every reason under the sun to believe that it's Jover and that it's impossible to turn around the situation now, we get this fun track to accompany the scene that gives you just a little bit of hope. Just a little bit. This song, especially at the beginning, gives off this little playful and mischievous tone, as if it was a song ripped straight out of a mystery movie or something. Like this little melody that just kind of jumps up and down like this is really fitting for Gojo's character, because it really makes us think that, hey, you know, things actually might turn out okay. Oh, and yes, this is another feature of the Gojo motif, though it is a little more subtle. Oh, also a little side note, I love it when they incorporate the music into the mid-episode eye catches like this. It's just so cool. I love it. Okay, real quick one, but the last scene I'll go over in this section is the one shortly after this, where Yuji springs into action with Mechamaru in his ear to gather people to recapture Gojo, which the name of the song is called Recapture, by the way. It's obviously a much more optimistic sounding song, with the purpose of pumping us up and starting the emotional momentum we really need to do something like Unseal Gojo. It's energetic, it's upbeat, and it fits really well with these scenes of Yuji running through the city, beating up curses, and making his way up to the rooftops. And I shouldn't have to say this at this point, but of course, this song once again makes use of Gojo's theme. Okay, let's go through some quickies now. So episode 11 doesn't have too much stuff that I haven't already talked about, but I just want to bring some attention to this one song. It plays when Yuji and Megumi are, you know, the dude with the fucking inverse powers whose name nobody fucking remembers. It's called Fight Alongside because they're fighting alongside each other. Wow. But this song is an absolute bop. It is so fun. We start out with a super quick rhythm, immediately giving us a sense of anticipation for what's coming up. Once these guitars come in later, it's clear that we're just gonna be in for a good time. This is just one of those really classic, really fun shonen fight songs. But then once we start to slow the music down, once again, we've seen this technique before, they start slowing down the music as the person, whoever it is, starts to explain their technique. We're peeling away layers of instrumentation here in the song, and it gives us more of a chance to focus on what's being said. And after a little bit of this, he's just about to be finished talking, and we get everything in the music swept up and taken out all at once for the drop, just before we're hit with the beautiful piano melody. Just watch. The piano is synced up with Yuji and Megumi's hits landing. It's beautiful. It's fucking awesome. I feel like when you're directing a scene like this and you're choosing a piece of music that has this kind of sharp contrast that's playing during the drop, it's like a waste if you don't time it specifically to go with a major shift or development in the fight. Like this. It's so perfect that this piano starts playing exactly as the hit happens. It's so satisfying. I'm playing it again. It's so good! Fuck! This part and everything that comes after it, by the way, just really screams like victory. That's the feeling you get from this music here. It's awesome. I love this song. It shows up 3 times this season, and each of those times is just so much fun. But yeah, the point is, even the more minor fights in this season are pretty decked out with really good music and really good soundtrack usage, so fucking, it's really impressive. And if you're interested in a kind of better musical analysis or breakdown of this song in particular, better than what I can do, check this video out. This next scene is, well, this one.
Its emotional intensity during an exchange between 2 characters being made uncomfortable and stared at is an aspect to the female gaze.
Nanami finally shows up to make me wet. And also to beat the shit out of this little fuckhead here. Let's actually talk about Nanami's theme, because I love Gojo's theme, but I've had enough of it. Fucking, we're moving on to the real big boy and his incredibly beautiful motif here. This theme, like many in the soundtrack, is chaotic. It's got a super irregular rhythm. It's got notes bouncing up and down all over the place. And very notably, this contrasts a lot with Nanami's character, what we know about it. Because Nanami normally is a really by-the-books, proper, salaryman type of guy. But as soon as we hit overtime, things change, and it's reflected in the chaos of the rhythms here. We're not following the rules anymore here. We're going fucking crazy. The rhythm is irregular, the instrumentation is irregular, everything is weird, and it's fucking beautiful. So of course, during this incredibly iconic scene in season 2, we're using the theme again, except it's in a different song. This song is called Dull Knife, which is a really cool way to describe Nanami and his knife and all that shit. But essentially this whole song is pretty much just the Nanami motif on a loop, except with a big difference here that it sounds kind of twisted and evil, as if the song was from like a horror movie or something, which makes sense because my man is angry. Overall, I'd say that this is a really cool way to take a theme that we all know and love already and just kind of twist it a bit to recontextualize it and make it new and fresh. Holy fuck. This fight has so much music. Alright, this is a big one. Not that the other ones haven't been big ones, but this, trust me, because fucking this fight has so much music in it. Yuji versus Choso. Here is the full list of tracks that played during this fight. As you probably know, this is a really long fight too. It lasts most of this episode. And because it's so long, we can actually kind of divide the fight up into different phases. And each of the phases is kind of defined by some kind of shift or break in the fighting, like dialogue, for example. And of course, with each phase of the fight also comes a unique track from the soundtrack. Okay, this is a big one. We're gonna be here for a while. So we start with phase 1 of the fight. Phase 1 of the fight is just as Yuji is showing up, and it starts literally immediately. So we start with Attack by Storm, which is the first song featured in phase 1 of the fight. It's a pretty fast-paced song, pretty much right off the bat, which you need to have because of how suddenly this fight starts. But I wouldn't say the song is really that intense, at least compared to some of the other ones coming up, which makes sense because we're just getting started here. But something that this episode does really well in particular has to do with song choice according to the intensity of the scene. This first phase of the fight was just the intro. Both fighters are just kind of feeling each other out and figuring out exactly who they're fighting. So it makes sense to have a song like this that's not too intense, it's not too extreme, it's just kind of perfect for like an intro kind of fight. But that ends fairly quickly. So once that's over, we get to Choso asking Yuji about his brothers, and Yuji saying that they were crying. This pisses Choso the fuck off, so in response we get launched into phase 2 of the fight. And like I mentioned before, the song matches up really well with how intense the fight is, so we get a more intense part of the fight, therefore we get a more intense song. This song is called Self-Embodiment of Perfection, which is a Season 1 song. If you're extra attentive, you'll notice this is actually Mahito's theme. This is his domain expansion theme, though I don't really think it was picked for that reason. Either way, the higher intensity of this song matches up with Choso and Yuji just fucking decking each other. But really what's happening here, if you pay attention, is Choso is beating the absolute shit out of Yuji. He's winning. This is a villain theme that's playing specifically when the villain character is winning in the fight. Eventually we build up to this climactic point. Choso's just been feeding Yuji his shit non-stop, and he starts to prepare this what seems like a stronger attack. And of course, while he's doing it, the music starts to amp up too as we get closer to the song's drop. But just before we get there, we instead get this. A really unexpected, jarring cutoff, both from the fighting and the song altogether, to put us into this kind of uneasy, paused state just before the next phase starts. The song that plays for phase 3 of this fight is actually With Rage, which we've heard several times before already. But what's extra useful about this song is the beginning portion again, which doubles as this kind of quiet ambient noise that you're hearing right now. So while we're in this transition period hearing Yuji and Choso's thoughts, they start playing the beginning of With Rage before fully transitioning into the song the moment Choso fires his next attack. Again, it's another fucking perfectly timed thing. He goes pew, and then it goes dun. And as we get into this action section of With Rage, we see Yuji kind of closing the distance between them. And then what we get later is another shift in the song, because as we know, there's a piano part coming up in With Rage. The song transitions and shifts a lot. So what do they do to kind of match up with that? Once again, the shift in the song accompanies a shift in the fight, a shift in the scene. Yuji is closing the distance, but as soon as he gets close, Choso turns it around on him and attacks him back. And that matches up perfectly to that shift in the song that we're hearing. It's so wonderful. It's so well directed. And after Yuji fails his attack, the song ends here, which completes that phase of the fight. At this point, Mechamaru calls him and we're launched into more of a strategic phase of the fight. And of course, we're slowing down a bit here, so what better way to accompany that than with the aptly named song called Prepare Yourself. The song's been used as kind of a prepare/discuss type of song before in this season as well, especially back in the Hidden Inventory arc. So it's a great fit here too, as Mechamaru starts coaching Yuji on how to fight Choso, and while they lure him into the bathroom too. The song does a great job at keeping up a quick tempo, so we're not quite relaxed, but it still slows down the pacing of the fight because of how the characters need to think about how to approach this. Then after that, Choso successfully gets lured into the bathroom to start phase 5 of the fight. And we are blessed with Mechamaru's presence here because we're given that fucking Evangelion sounding theme from earlier. Mechamaru may technically be dead already and not even in a mech anymore, but god does he live on through the music. And it fits really well here because we finally get to see Yuji start to turn the tables on Choso. This phase actually does have two songs, because once we see that Choso's blood manipulation isn't working anymore, we get some narration explaining what's actually going on. And that narration is paired with the song Red Scale, which is also the name of the episode. Similar to the song we heard before, Prepare Yourself, this is another fast-paced but simple piece that lends itself well to these kinds of explanation, exposition type scenes. There's some cool things about this song. It's pretty simple, but what stands out, and the reason why it's able to keep up the tension in a scene like this, is because of this kind of pulsing sound that plays repetitively and quickly, and it almost sounds like a really fast heartbeat, which really fits well with the whole blood manipulation kind of thing going on. Also, this song is technically the 10th and final use of Gojo's theme in this soundtrack. Though the song in this episode actually does get cut off right before we get to that motif. For the start of the 6th phase of this fight, the conditions have changed. Choso can no longer use his blood manipulation, so we're in for a good old-fashioned fist fight. Thematically, we're kind of going backwards from more complex fight mechanics to more simple traditional martial arts. So of course it makes sense that the music would also go backwards to a Season 1 song, countermeasure for domain expansion. It's kind of this rock and roll heavy song that's all action, and it's perfect for this fist fight scene. But of course, we know that doesn't last too long, because Choso turns things around by using his secret stash of blood, this little fucking snake. Yuji realizes that he could die here, but then he realizes what his role is. He's just a fucking cog, bro. He's a cog! And he finds the resolve to fight. So of course, the song that starts playing here in the 7th and final phase of the fight is called Resolve. This is the longest one by far and the absolute climax of this fucking amazing episode and this fucking amazing fight. First of all, this song. For fans of the Season 1 soundtrack, you may have noticed that this song is super related to the song Remember from Season 1, which played during the episode where Yuji and Nobara fight and kill Choso's brothers, Eso and Kechizu. To call this a leitmotif, kind of like how we already went through with Gojo and Nanami's themes, would be kind of an understatement, because it's more like the entire song was mirrored. It was just completely copied, basically. The song is almost kind of like the instrumental version of Remember. So of course here we are at the culmination of Choso seeking revenge for his brothers for what Yuji did to them. So obviously you want to use the song that's nearly a one-to-one recreation of the original song that played during the conflict that started this whole thing to begin with. The start is just the song building up and building up as these two prepare to duke it out one last time. And we get another one of those brief moments where the scene seems to pause right before the song drops and we go full force. And as the fight goes on, we get the main motif of Remember blasting loud and clear, especially when Choso starts taking the lead in the fight. We even get this insane part here where Yuji gets slashed really hard near his ear, and the song gets temporarily kind of muted for a bit. I have no idea why they did this, but it was so fucking cool, honestly. Then we're back to the main motif. And just as Yuji's about to land his final attack, we get that same build-up section that we had in the original song, like this part. But it's a trick. As you know, unlike in Season 1, Yuji does not win this fight. Here we see and hear exactly what we got before with this part. Everything is the same. We get the same rhythm in both songs, the same rapid cuts back and forth matching with that rhythm. And because of this, we're expecting what we got before. A really big, huge payoff after Yuji lands his hit. But instead, we get... The music cuts off. It's Choso who takes the upper hand and wins from here. Ironically, this song doesn't resolve. Honestly, this was a powerhouse of an episode. An incredible fight, only made better with some of the best music direction I've seen in a while. And honestly, a genius move to compose this song the way they did and use it in the scene the way they did. Zombie Daddy. Ooh, Zombie Daddy is here. All right, now that we're finally done with that, we are going to move on to the next big fight here, which is Maki, Nanami, and Naobito versus Octillery. There's a ton of different music tracks, once again, that play during this fight, but most of them are from things we've already heard before, using similar techniques that we've already talked about. There's also some cool moments, like Megumi showing up in the middle of the fight, and Megumi's theme from Season 1 starts playing. It's pretty awesome. But what I really want to get at here is not Octillery and his dumb little fight. It's more actually about Zombie Daddy. Toji is back! After Toji's shown up, we get our initial confrontations out of the way, and as soon as the opening for this episode ends, we're launched directly full speed into Toji's fight with this beast of a song. This song is called Physical Prowess, and it is fucking hype as shit. It did appear earlier in the season one time with a scene with no relation to Toji, but fuck it, man. It's called Physical Prowess. It's so hype. I'm naming it Toji's theme. This is Toji's theme. And this is yet another piece in the soundtrack that is just balls to the wall chaos. We get a minute and 40 seconds of a blitzing fast fight showing Toji's, well, physical prowess. And that's pretty much it. It's a beautiful scene and a beautiful song to go along with it. But another quick thing I noticed before we move on is that this song does use a borrowed motif from the song Delirious, which, if you remember, is the song that played during the Gojo versus Toji fight. Both songs were featured during Toji fights, and both are connected through this little theme. Okay, we're gonna go a bit out of order here because after this fight is when you-know-who comes in, but I want to follow Toji a bit longer for now. So after Octillery's been taken care of, Toji turns towards Megumi, and we get two more songs that play during their fight, if you want to call it that, which are Locust Plague and Attack by Storm, which are two songs that are basically just non-stop chaos, well suited to the speed demon that is Toji. But the standout song to me here is when the fight ends, and it's called Still Unaware. It starts once Toji finally looks at Megumi's face and realizes who he is, and the song kind of starts out as this unsettling and disorienting thing as Toji starts processing his thoughts. But this transitions pretty soon into more of a simple, nostalgic sounding piano melody as we get launched into a flashback of Toji talking about selling his son to the Zenin clan because he should have a better life there. I like to think of this piano as being symbolic of Toji's life. For just a moment after seeing his son, Toji stops being a mindless killing machine and becomes human. And this melody, as well as Toji's life, starts slowing down as soon as he stabs himself, before it stops completely as he falls down to the ground. Sometimes it really is the slower emotional pieces like this that stand out a bit more because of how much the rest of this season is filled with these quick action songs. As you can see, I've written down, oh shit, oh fuck, oh shit, oh god, we're so fucked, it's Jover, oh shit, oh fuck. Sukuna, also known as Sukuna, changes everything, both in the show and musically, because we've finally gotten to the part where Sukuna wakes up. You know, after Jogo force feeds Yuji fucking 10 fingers, which by international standards actually officially makes him the throat goat. Congratulations to Yuji Itadori. And musically speaking, it's really clear to us that Sukuna is not messing around, because the exact moment he wakes up, that's when we hear what I like to call the Sukuna choir. This song, called Awaken, is the first in the soundtrack to feature this choir, which is obviously very associated with Sukuna. So it's very fitting that this is the first thing that we hear. The song is slow, going at more of like a walking pace rather than a running pace. And the choir is absolutely chilling to the bone. And it's basically like a musical signal because of how much contrast there is between this song and everything else that we've heard before. It's telling us that, hey, listen, this is actually a game-changing threat that just woke up here. It's completely different from everything we've seen so far in the season. The song gets louder as Sukuna approaches the girls, and as we hear the strings come into play, he finally starts taking action. The main thing here, the dominant feeling really is fear. Sukuna's presence takes command during this scene, but the soundtrack accompanying it really does an amazing job at conveying fear above all else. And it gives all the characters this feeling of, oh god, we're so fucked. Later on, after all the stuff with Megumi and Toji is all over, we get the start of a different fight. We finally get the song that's named after this episode, and also my personal favorite song in the entire soundtrack, Thunderclap. Thunderclap is the first of 3 songs that I consider to be part of this basically Sukuna trio of songs in the soundtrack. They're all basically companion pieces of each other. They share similar instrumentation and tones, they're all right next to each other in the album, and they're all really heavily featured in the 2 Sukuna fights of the Shibuya incident. This one, and
You can see it, Maharaga! You can see my curse technique!
In terms of the music, this piece is a heavy hitter. We really mixed together a lot of old instrumentation, including the Sukuna choir, obviously, with more modern sounds like the electric guitar coming in partway through, and I really find this mix to be a great representation of what's going on in the anime. You have Sukuna, a legendary figure from over 1,000 years ago, now causing all of this crazy destruction in the modern age. So we show that musically by blending together all these different types of instruments that you might not normally hear together. The main section of the song sounds incredibly haunting, like bone-chilling, terrifying. But it also sounds sorrowful, tragic, like it's fully capturing not only the insane fight that's going on and how cool it all is, but also all the devastation and destruction that it's causing. Shibuya is literally melting in lava as we listen to this part of the music. Without exaggerating at all, this is the soundtrack to an apocalyptic event. This song obviously is used to perfection in this scene. You can think of Thunderclap as a song that kind of jumps back and forth between 2 different phases, those being a slow phase and a fast phase. It's pretty simple. Slow equals Jogo, fast equals Sukuna. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. So we start out in the slow section before the fight started, and it's this prelude section where we're hearing the solemn Sukuna choir again while getting the context of the fight from a quick flashback. But the moment we see Sukuna on screen starting to fight, that's when we start the fast section. It's immediately and obviously recognizable by the strong electric guitars coming in. Sukuna's flying around, he's slicing Jogo up, dodging his attacks, throwing him around, he's destroying buildings left and right. It's obvious Sukuna is our main character here, and because of that, the music has shifted to give us these fast, chaotic rhythms. And at this point, we get interrupted for a bit as Jogo gets blasted through an entire building and lies there for a brief second, and we hear a similar technique that was used during the Choso fight, which is this ears ringing, music somewhat muted kind of thing. But we do go back into it, and this part serves as a transition back into the slow section. There's more focus on the choir now, and we switch perspectives back to Jogo. Jogo becomes our lead now for the slow section. We get a Jogo flashback, we get Jogo showing off his attacks versus Sukuna, and the slow moving choir leads us into our next section. This next section features the strings leading us into this devastating and tragic melody, as we literally watch Shibuya burn and melt into nothing. But suddenly, our focus shifts again. The buildings get slashed apart, Jogo gets slashed apart, and now, musically speaking, we've returned to the fast section. Sukuna is back in control. And as we get to this part, the fight slows down again as we go back to the choir, back to the slow section, as Sukuna himself slows down and takes the time to really taunt his opponent. It's really important that these slow sections of the music are paired together with the dialogue of the scene to match that tempo perfectly. And because we're back in the slow section, that means Jogo is now our main character again. And because of that, this new slow section culminates in Jogo preparing to launch his maximum technique, the giant meteor. And of course, the meteor itself is this slow attack with tons of buildup, which matches really well with this last part of the song that does exactly that. It's conveying a slow but rising melody, building up and building up over time. Kusakabe and Panda are trying to make their escape, but the strings continue to build up and cause us to wonder what the fuck is about to happen. And then very suddenly... I don't know about you, but I shat my pants when I watched that for the first time. The music led us to believe that something was going to happen with this giant meteor, signified through Jogo's slow, string and choir-backed section of the song, but what we got instead was somehow way worse. Just a sudden and abrupt conclusion, like another one of those jump scare techniques that I was talking about earlier. This marks the end of this song, but obviously we're far from done with the Sukuna trio here. In the very next episode, we get Sukuna versus Mahoraga, which comes with an even wider variety of music. The structure of this fight is once again separated into phases, and each phase has a distinct musical identity to it. The fight starts off with some fairly sporadic and non-committal musical phrases here. It's not really enough to be like a full song or anything, but it's enough to ease us into it. The same way Sukuna and Mahoraga are just starting out and feeling each other out in this first phase of the fight. But as soon as Sukuna is done eating his fucking popcorn, we start with phase 2 and a familiar song, Locust Plague. It's a song that really ups the intensity by a lot all of a sudden. Locust Plague is not part of that Sukuna trio that I was talking about, but it definitely thematically fits here. We get these long, drawn-out phrases from the brass section giving off this feeling of fighting evil, and the steel drums giving us a really good sense of a fast tempo to keep up the intensity of the fight. And these steel drums, by the way, are something that we're definitely going to be hearing again pretty soon in this section. They're really important, so just keep that in mind. But as much as I'm enjoying the song, it does get abruptly stopped by the sound of Mahoraga's wheel turning as it does its first adaptation. And then we get our 5,000th appearance of With Rage. Only instead of this being the third phase of the fight, it's a bit different, because this is the part where we're watching innocent people in the area try to hide away from the fighting and the devastation that's going on. And this instance of With Rage only plays the beginning part without any of the main melody. It's the part that's just this really unsettling ambient noise again, which creates this uneasy feeling that never gets resolved. It's an interesting transition, but just as we get to the part where you'd expect the song to continue and for the melody to appear, we suddenly swap back. Not even to a different song, we swap back into Locust Plague. We do swap back into Locust Plague, but it's only the percussion parts now. Just the drums hammering away, keeping the focus on the quick pace of the fight. But then, the wheel turns again, signaling yet another shift in the fight. The real third phase of the fight has started now. We abruptly, and I mean abruptly, switch to the fast section of Thunderclap that I gushed about for so long earlier, as we're fully back in the fray. It's even more intense now than anything we've seen before. It's more chaos, more insanity, more destruction to the city. And once again, they actually change up the song here a bit. They completely end up removing the Sukuna choir, because normally we'd be hearing this section, which leads us into the strings. But interestingly, it's missing this time. But regardless, that same feeling of devastation and tragedy still remains here. Near the end of this piece playing, Sukuna gets really excited and gets closer and closer to figuring out what Maharaga's abilities are. And as this happens, we get his sinister laughter accompanying the fast and chaotic part of the song. And it's here that we head into the next phase of the battle. We finally get Maharaga's titular theme. Eight-handled sword divergent Sila Divine General Maharaga. At least it's not called UC Big Girl. But actually, speaking of Attack on Titan songs, there is a section of this song that sounds kind of like Ashes on the Fire from Season 4 of Attack on Titan. I have no idea what this means, but there you go. I guess it makes sense because of the chaos and destruction that's going on in both shows. Instrumentation-wise, we get the steel drums coming back from earlier, but rhythmically and melodically, it all sounds like chaos once again, which fits really well with the absolutely insane shit that we're seeing on screen alongside this song being played. The song is actually fairly short-lived though, it's not that long, because what we get instead now is maybe the most iconic piece of music in this whole soundtrack. The song named after Sukuna's domain expansion, Malevolent Shrine. This is the longest track in the entire OST by a decent margin, even including Season 1. It sits at 5 minutes and 18 seconds, and it's also got the same kind of sorrowful and tragic feeling that Thunderclap gave us. It literally sounds like the end of the world. Like, if I woke up and the whole world was on fire and everyone was dying, this would be the soundtrack. I do want to bring some special attention to the percussion section. Right off the bat, the song is very percussion heavy, which sets the stage really well for how serious this is going to be and how grand of a scale the coming events are going to be on. Strong percussion is really important for making it sound like a march or like some kind of war that's going on. It really kind of emphasizes the intensity of everything that's going on in the scene and in the music itself. Specifically, I want to finally talk about these steel drums that I've been yapping about so much. It comes in near the beginning of the piece and persists for pretty much the whole duration of the song. And at least in the way that I like to see it in this piece, this little rhythm being played by the steel drums here represents Sukuna himself. It's this constant presence in the song that never really goes away, even after all the other layers get piled on top of it. And it sounds kind of primal, sounds kind of like war tribey, like it signifies this primal nature that Sukuna brings. This idea of survival of the fittest. The percussion-heavy beginning of this piece starts when Sukuna is starting his final barrage of attacks on Maharaga. This is the stage where he finally figures Maharaga out and how to defeat it. The strings come in here as he starts to explain the ultimate adaptation ability, and the melody played by the strings here continually rise and build up, which gives us a sense of raised anticipation. And as the song starts to build up to a climax here, the layers suddenly drop out. And we get those steel drums front and center just before the actual drop. Sukuna finally uses his domain expansion, devastating the entire area of Shibuya and decimating it to shreds. The positioning of the song, once again, is perfect. As soon as Sukuna is done saying Malevolent Shrine, choir comes in. And just like in Thunderclap, the music really does feel like a tragedy. The choir sounds like they're crying, like they're mourning, like we've lost all hope. That's the kind of feeling we get here. And towards the end, the choir and strings start to fade out, and the exact moment they leave us, we hear the iconic line. And once again, just like the beginning of the song, the percussion takes back the stage. And very gradually, layers of instruments start peeling away one by one until only the steel drums are left. Remember how I said that the steel drum rhythms here are like a representation of Sukuna himself? Well, at the end, as he wills it, The only survivor is the strongest one. Just as only the steel drums remain at the end, only Sukuna remains at the end of this fight. Oh wait, we also can't finish off this section without talking about, you know, this. Okay, it's kind of a meme at this point, but I honestly do really like the placement of the opening song here as an insert. But I also think this scene would work really well if there was just silence. Like only ambience, maybe just the sound of the wind, just to kind of emphasize the feeling of emptiness and sorrowfulness. There's a video out there that does kind of do this, and I'll play it right now. And honestly, it's a very different feeling, very empty, very chilling, like I was talking about. Ultimately, I don't know which one I would prefer, but one thing's for sure. This episode was another musical masterpiece. The animation obviously blew me away here, but the music was what stood out to me just as much, if not more. Hey, what's up? I'm from the future. Whoa. Some of you might have a question about the Blu-ray, and for those of you living under a rock, because of the MAPPA executive's general awfulness, the animators weren't actually able to complete their full vision for this episode in time for the TV release. But recently, the completed Blu-ray version of this episode was released, and holy fuck is it different. It's hugely upgraded in terms of animation, like some of the best I've ever fucking seen in my life, holy shit. But there's a few changes in terms of the music too. Basically, some of the scenes have been extended, so the music in these parts that were originally cut a bit short were extended too. For the most part, this doesn't mean too much, like everything I talked about still applies, but this does give us some additional cool moments, notably near the ends of each song and how they transition into the next song. Like for example, with the changed scenes, they could now do this for the end of Thunderclap. And a smoother transition for the end of the Maharaga theme. Alright, that's about it for this part. We're in the final stretch now! Oh yeah! But unfortunately, we now sadly have to say goodbye to one of our goats. Kento fucking Nanami, two-faced out of his mind, thinking about Malaysia while facing off against a billion transfigured humans. We get a super emotional piano piece for his goodbye called Vague Reason, which signifies a celebration of Nanami's life as it approaches its end. As he remarks how tired he is, the piano starts playing these rising chords, getting more intense and more emotional. And eventually this becomes a fight song. A very different one from what we've heard so far in the other fights in this show, but a really fitting one for the end of this character and his desperate last stand. Honestly, there's not too much more to say about this. It's really sad, it's really beautiful, and of course it ends with the piano dissipating along with the reveal that this motherfucker is here. The Mahito fights that take place over the next few episodes obviously have a shit ton of music. But once again, it's mostly songs that we've already heard before using techniques similar to what we've discussed already. The real sauce here in terms of the music comes not through Yuji, but from Nobara. During her fight, the moment she turns the tables on Mahito and hits him with resonance, then we get her character theme. Jujutsu Sorcerer, Nobara Kugisaki. It's a really youthful, graceful, and nostalgic sounding theme that for whatever reason always kind of reminded me of the Bravely Default soundtrack. But yeah, this is another one of those victory sounding themes, which is especially prevalent as we switch over to Yuji, who takes his chance to, holy shit, bro. Holy shit, bro. Chill. Okay, bro, relax. Chill. Holy fuck. Jesus Christ. Okay, we get it. Okay. But as Mahito decides to be a little fucking bitch and use the secret Joestar technique, the song ends here and we switch into a song called Searching for Rico, even though Rico has about as much of a chance of showing up here as Nobara's chances of winning this fight. This is a song that we've heard before, but the way that they use it in this specific scene is a little different. Because as the two Mahito clones meet up, we get to what's supposed to be this part of the song. But instead, we get this weird, distorted, slowed down version, which indicates to us that something's wrong. Something's very wrong. This is the show using music again to play with the audience's expectations and signal once again that something's off by changing a song that we've heard a bunch of times before into something weird and different. But yeah, after that we get the longest fucking flashback ever. Like a whole 10-minute thing just to tell us that this girl is fucking cooked, and really soon we're gonna get a really disgusting POV shot from inside her eye socket. But then once that's over, we get the song Life Wasn't So Bad. You might as well call this song I Am Going to Die Now. In the scene itself, the song starts as soon as Nobara's friend says,
元気かな、野原ちゃん。今どこで何してるんだろう。
It's another slow, nostalgic sounding song with a simple guitar melody as Nobara does her chair thing, reminiscing over her life and giving us a really powerful moment to process. And as the song ends, she delivers that iconic line that the song itself is named after.
悪くなかった。
In the episode right after this, there's actually no music at all for the first 4.5 minutes as we take time to process what just happened to Nobara and watch Mahito absolutely brutalize Yuji over and over again. And the lack of music serves to kind of emphasize this feeling of hopelessness, that our guy has simply given up. That is, until we hear one sound. Followed by one very, very familiar character theme. It's a slowed down version of one of the best named tracks in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, the man Aoi Todo, which you may remember from season 1. Todo's character theme is basically like a triumphant chant of victory. This theme signaling his appearance, as well as the whole "we are the exception" speech he gives, does an amazing job at just kind of reinvigorating us with hope. Also just because everyone fucking loves this guy, like, oh my god. He's not done with his speeches though. Todo gives Yuji his legendary ass motivational speech to get him back into the fight, and towards the end of this speech we get the song called Entrusted. By the way, I fucking love what the song starts on the exact line that it's named after. Look at this. Yeah. Anyway, it's another one of those optimistic, hopeful sounding songs that fits really perfectly with the message Todo is giving Yuji here. But like a lot of the songs in this soundtrack, this song also has a bit of a shift in the middle of it. And that shift starts happening here when Todo and Mahito start approaching each other. The music gets louder, and we enter a very interesting part of the song. Did you get it? Yeah, it's the Boogie Woogie theme, yeah! It's another amazing use of a leitmotif to add to our collection, because just like the original Boogie Woogie, this part of the song is kind of this wacky, weird, digital sounding melody with a really weird, disorienting feel to it. Almost as if it's mimicking the feeling of being teleported around against your will by Todo himself. And of course, the tempo and the intensity of this song is really great for keeping up with the sick fight that we're witnessing too. This song's pretty cool though because it has yet another shift just as Yuji swaps in, and we hear the song slow things down a bit more and go back to that original hopeful, optimistic feeling. And we build up again and build up again as Yuji hits this incredibly satisfying black flash, together with a tribute to Nanami as the song eventually fades out. After a bunch of fighting, along with a lot of music that I'm not going to talk about because, Jesus Christ, I'm not going to talk about literally every single fucking scene, we get to the next major development in the fight. Mahito's super speedy, fraudulent copycat domain expansion. He activates it and manages to hit Todo with it, which, ironically, when Todo is forced to cut off his own arm, making it so that he can't use Boogie Woogie anymore, this starts the song Boogie Woogie from Season 1. But soon after that, we get... I have nothing to say. Which is what I would say if this fucking Todo schizo idol J-pop song didn't have a leitmotif in it. Yeah, that's right. Listen to this shit. It's the Todo theme. Like, in this. This is the best motif usage, like, ever. Like, Fuck all the other ones that I've talked about. Jesus Christ, check this shit out. It's a masterpiece. It's brilliant. It's awesome. After this point, we're treated to Mahito's transformation, which gives us the piece called Transformation Metamorphosis. This song, like a lot of the other songs in this soundtrack, starts off with some uneasy ambience once again, but as the two start approaching each other, it starts picking up a little bit more as we once again have the music timed to when the two fighters finally launch themselves at each other into a familiar motif. Yep, another motif. This time it's unsurprisingly Mahito's motif, the same theme that we heard from Self-Embodiment of Perfection from Season 1 and from earlier in this season as well. We've got the same instrumentation, we've got borrowed rhythms and tempos from that song. And eventually, the same main melody that we all know and love. Mahito's theme kind of sounds almost childish, you know, like with these short and repetitive notes. And this new version that we get in Season 2 sounds more refined, more mature, reflecting how Mahito himself has matured as a cursed spirit. And just as we're about to start fighting in this last phase, we're treated to Impatience, another song from Season 1. And I see this as kind of a callback, because this is effectively the culmination of all of Season 1's conflicts being finally resolved here. These two, with so much history and hatred between them, are finally having their final match here. And this song, I think, is the perfect one to accompany it. It's one of the most prominent songs that we heard in Season 1. It played a whole bunch of times, and it's really, really memorable. So it's really good that we get to hear this as kind of like this nostalgic send-off to what we had before. But we do get one last interruption. Todo appears and beans Mahito for the last time so that Yuji can finally take him out. And entrusted, Todo's new Season 2 theme is the one that plays here for his final act. And as I've said so many times before, this song is a declaration of victory. Though they do end the song before we can hear the Boogie Woogie motif because, you know, Boogie Woogie is dead. Okay, what's next? We're finally here at the end. There's a bunch more music still, and there's a lot of highlights, like Geto showing up to that one piano note once again. But I'm gonna skip ahead a bit to the last fight of the season. Choso steps onto the field and realizes who he's looking at. Fittingly, the song that plays here is called Your Mom. I mean, Detestable Person. It's a slow, dramatic piece with one main melody led by the strings, perfectly made for a big revelation scene like this. As Choso describes what happened, the fact that he was able to sense Yuji's pain after almost killing him, the fact that he was deeply hurt, we get the song Hurt from Season 1, which was notably played during the scene where Yuji and Nobara finally killed Choso's brothers. This song is very much like Remember, only sadder because it's played with only strings this time. It's a lot slower, and the tone is generally a lot more somber and regretful. It represents the great deal of pain that Yuji and Choso have both had to endure when it came to all of this stuff going on. And so essentially having the song be the prelude to the final fight of the season is really fitting and perfect. Choso versus Urame and Geto starts as we get the titular song of the entire series, also from Season 1, called Jujutsu Kaisen. It's another really sick callback to Season 1 because this is the fight that takes place after we've just gotten a huge revelation about who this guy is, who's been messing with everything, and basically who's been the mastermind pushing the plot forward since the start of the series. So it makes perfect sense that we start off this fight with a song that is named after the whole series, what you could basically call the main theme of Jujutsu Kaisen. As we enter the next phase of the fight, as we progress, we get the return of the Mahoraga theme, no, I will not say the full name again, which is a villainous sounding song to accompany the villain characters taking the lead and starting to win in the fight. But this only lasts a little bit of time before we get yet another abrupt cutoff. God, I love these abrupt cutoffs.
Hey guys, it's me Yuki, sorry I'm late. LMAO, what kind of girls do you like?
Now, as you know, the Shibuya incident doesn't exactly end well. The good guys pretty much lose, so this final thing that happens, Fake Geto's explanation of what's about to happen, the cursed spirits taking over Shibuya and Geto making his escape, is accompanied by this very slow, somber, dramatic, string-heavy piece. It's the total opposite of the victory themes that we've heard so many times in this season already. This music, combined with the rain, the darkness, and the general sense of defeat, makes for a really sad ending to the whole thing. And to finish it all off, we get another really well-timed piece of the music here, because as soon as Geto starts to unleash his cursed spirits, and he declares that this is the world of the future, we get this crazy piano rhythm, followed by what sounds like this evil villain's triumph theme. These really dramatic phrases, the violins and the pianos just going crazy on us. But of course, the end wouldn't be the end if we didn't get a really, really abrupt, powerful cutoff of the song that sounds like a TV screen shutting off. We were cut short before we got to do anything. The Shibuya incident is now over, as quickly as it started. We did it! Oh my god, that was so fucking long! This was the longest video! Oh! Last few things I want to say before I tearfully end this video. I know this was long as shit, I just want to say thanks if you're still sticking around here. It really says something good about your attention span. Unless you skipped here, then fuck you. One of my favorite types of videos to watch on YouTube are of professional musicians reacting to music from anime and video games and other nerd shit like that. Seeing these people who've more or less dedicated their whole lives to the study and appreciation of music, discover and validate anime music to the extent that they do, is so satisfying. It really affirms to me that, anime music is legitimate. Even on a technical level, it can really push the boundaries of what music can be. There's just so much of it out there, whether it's through openings or endings, insert songs, or soundtracks. And it's all so unique and interesting. So here's my message to you, especially if you're someone who feels any kind of self-consciousness or embarrassment from liking anime music or anything like that. It is every bit as good and legitimate as music coming from any other medium, and it deserves to be appreciated all the same. But yeah, for this video, I basically just had the goal of showing my appreciation for anime music. I don't know if I'll be doing this again, it kind of depends. This was kind of a lot. Once again, thanks for watching. See ya. Idiot.